Welcome to this episode of the Real Estate Faucet, Real Estate on Tap, where we put the knowledge of experts in the real estate industry in your hands. Today we have a special guest, Chris Constantine of the Constantine & Co. team at Keller Williams. Chris has been a family friend for many years and has been a mentor and colleague for the last several years for myself. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me. I'm a father of two, stepfather of three, and I've been a realtor for 21 years. Um, we've grown into a team of five salespeople here, and we have a full-time admin. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's quite a career. So today we're going to talk about local market stats in Greater Moncton, kind of trends we're seeing, what some of these stats mean, comparing current market stats to market stats of pre-pandemic years, and just some general advice that you would have for consumers. So to start off, what is one piece of advice you have for people when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, so usually, this is this is funny because it's feeling so formal. We're just getting started at this, and this is our first one, so it's kind of fun. I don't use the word exciting very much, as you know. It's kind of one of my cringe words when people use it, but I think it's cool that you're getting this off the ground, and there's so many things that we repeat and say to folks when we meet with them and talk to them and guide them through the process. We have repeat clients that kind of hear some of it over and over again. But anyway, yeah. So I just had to, had to. It was feeling a little too formal there, so I just had
Oh
to.
yeah, no need to keep it formal. This is casual and just to
Yeah,
inform
yeah.
people.
So, yeah. So usually the first part of the conversation is around supply and demand. Often one of the first questions that people will ask us. We hear the question about how's the market. People ask us about when's the best time of year to sell their home, that sort of thing. So generally, one of the first conversations that we have with people is just explaining about supply and demand, and how it impacts what their house is worth now, how it's going to affect them in the future. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but with the way real estate's evolved, even over the time that I've been in the industry, we have a lot of data now. We have a lot of market indicators, a lot of things that we can look for. So supply and demand is generally one of the first things that we talk about, and how it impacts. So when we're trying to figure out the value on somebody's home, we're looking at what similar properties have sold for, and we're looking at how much competition they have at any given time. So the Everybody knows, the old saying, buy low, sell high. But the thing that we don't often think about is that in order for you to buy low, you've got to buy when there's lots of supply and not many other people are buying. And so, depending on what's going on in the market around you, often with real estate, like many other investments, you often have to go against what the mainstream is doing if you can, and that usually requires good advice to do it. So the biggest thing is to understand that principle and to not try and time the market. Trying to time the market, lots of times people are relying on information that they're hearing from the media and that sort of thing, trying to figure out, is now a good time to buy, is now a good time to sell. And real estate markets are local. It can be a good time to buy and sell in one neighborhood or in one part of the province or in one part of the country, and it can be completely the opposite in a different community or in a different part of the province. So the biggest thing is to understand that markets are local. What you hear generally in the media, is a snapshot of an overview of statistics that are being shared through the media streams, and it may or may not actually reflect what it is, the where your properties are located or where your home is located and what the value of that is. I guess
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
biggest thing, is supply and demand, and recognizing that markets are local. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said, Chris. And so, in saying all of that, we have a lot of buyers these days, as you and I both know. Um, they're on the sidelines. They're waiting for interest rates to fall. What sort of advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I've seen that. I've seen buyers move to the sidelines a few times for different reasons. Whenever anything significant happens, either in our economy or in the world, you look back to the Great Recession of the late 2000s. Um, uh, when when people are considering making a move, they're looking at their reasons for that. So people make moves for lifestyle changes often. Change of career, getting married, getting divorced. There's a variety of life changes that we go through that impacts our housing. But when we're looking at interest rates as an example, it's also relative, because when I got into the business, 8% was the norm, and 8% was considered good. Um, and so, yeah, it's kind of like that buyer remorse thing. The low interest rates were a reaction to the housing market crash, and the government trying to spur on housing activity and growth, and encourage people to invest in real estate. So interest rates were low, and it had a positive effect. So much of a positive effect, which is often the way. And you and I have had this conversation several times. We have this conversation whenever we're speaking with people in the industry, that the market is cyclic. It transitions. In a balanced market, the market doesn't really favor buyers or sellers one way or the other. Then for one reason or another, something will change that will cause more demand on housing. For example, immigration, which is drawing more and more people in, and it puts increased pressure on the housing. So that demand drives the prices up. That increased activity then causes investors to build more, for contractors to build more, because the demand is there. And then eventually that usually leads to an oversupply, and the market will correct itself again. So what we're seeing with buyers moving to the sidelines with interest rates, um, my advice would be, look at the historical values of properties in the location where you want to live, and see where the pricing is and what it's done over the last 5, 10, 15 years. In the market that we work in southeastern New Brunswick, overall prices have been trending up forever, really. Even during the Great Recession, prices took a little bit of a dip, but then they bounced back again. And really, we're one of the safest markets to invest in, and that's part of why you're seeing the activity that we're seeing here, especially since the pandemic, and people coming here and recognizing the value. So waiting on interest rates, it's highly unlikely interest rates are high. It's highly unlikely that they're going to go back down anytime soon. We may see some softening of them, as a protection measure, when interest rates, when mortgages that on properties that were bought during the pandemic, when those come due, if the Bank of Canada feels like they need to protect those people, maybe the interest rates will trend down a little bit. But we're looking, that's 3, 4, 5 years into the future. The equity that you could gain on a property over the next 3, 4, 5 years could way more than offset whatever that interest rate change might be. And again, and you're waiting on something that quite literally might not happen. But the thing that has been happening year over year for decades is housing prices in our market have been appreciating. So waiting on interest rates to go down. People who have the luxury of not needing to buy or don't have the desire to buy, they may sit and wait, and that might be their reason for doing so. But for the majority of people that are seriously considering investing in real estate or buying a home or upsizing or downsizing, we're already starting to see it now. A few months uh, beyond when the last rate hikes happened, um, life goes on, and the majority of people, they're not going to sit around waiting on interest rates. Whatever their reasons were for wanting to buy and sell, they're coming back now. That's the fall market, as you're well aware, is in full swing right now. We're busy, and the idea of it, people are just had to wrap their minds around, okay, those days are not there, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So let's move on with our lives and find that home that we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think, things I tell my clients is, if you want to build equity, you first have to purchase that property. So first time home buyers, go buy what you can afford. When interest rates do come down with the demand, that's going to mean increased prices. You've got equity and you can purchase another home, but get that first
Yeah,
home while you can, get what you can
yeah,
afford. And
yeah.
once you have it, you can build equity. If you try to time it, it's just not going to work.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, just adjust your one. I think I've probably said this to you a few years ago. Get on the elevator, right?
Yeah.
Get in the game. Get that. It might, again, just getting started. It kind of falls in line with what we're doing right here today, right? But
Yep.
just get started. Just get into the. Just get into the get something, get a home of your own, start investing in your own future, even if it means that you have to lower your expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
Doing that and buying smart, and what you can afford is going to allow you to transition moving forward that much faster into that. Maybe it's that dream home, that forever home, if that's your long term real estate goal, is to get into that forever home. But yeah, taking a step backwards so that you can go ahead is good advice. So yeah, you're bang on.
Yeah. Yeah. That first one's the hardest to get, but it's definitely the most important. Um, Switching it up a little bit, when the media starts talking about, sales activities down 12% compared to 2022, let's say, uh, people start thinking, the sky's falling, the market as a whole, prices are down 12%. You and I know that's not necessarily what that means. Can you clarify what that means and why we're seeing
Yeah,
sales activity, quote unquote, down 12%?
yeah. So we have so many of these conversations, and again, that's part of why I'm happy that you're doing this right now, because this is an avenue for us to get that information out to people. We talk about it. Part of the reason, generally, if something's hitting the media, it's probably 3 to 6 months after the actual effect, what we've seen.
Yep.
It takes a while for the general population to see the changes that we see over time. So yeah, and again, there's been that, there's so many folks have been predicting that, the bubble's going to burst, the market has to go down, these prices are crazy. Those things may be true in some markets that we don't work in, but we've been undervalued for so long. We our housing, when you look at the cost, you always have to measure everything off against the cost to replace something. And in our market, we still, our average price right now is hovering around 315, maybe it's as high as 330, 340 on average. That's a shock for a lot of folks who've been here their entire lives, or their adult lives, when a few short years ago, the average price was more like 225 or less, and you could buy a good starter entry level home for 125, 150,000. But we've just really gotten to the point where we're quite frankly still a bit undervalued, because the cost to replace, again, with pandemic supply and demand on materials and labor and that sort of thing, You can't replace the houses that we're selling for 315. You can't replace them for 315 or 320.
Right.
It's all relative to that replacement cost. So the media likes to they like to get people's attention. We want clicks, right?
They make their
Um,
money off doom and gloom.
right. Yeah, a lot of times the negativity creates causes people to click and read. Um, so as far as sales activity being down 12%, the other part that they don't really mention in those articles is they're comparing them to the three biggest years that we've ever seen in real estate in terms of transactions. We broke records year over year, 2020, 2021, 2022. Year over year, we broke records, and not just broke records, we demolished records. So when they talk about it being down 12% over 2022, you're talking about it, the number of sales being down over record numbers of sales, and you're also not factoring in supply, because if you don't have anything to sell, you can't have increased sales numbers. And we're still, and this is good news for people who have a home and want to sell, and bad news for people that want to sell and buy, or people that just want to get in as buyers, is that we're still very low on inventory, historically speaking. So when you have a limited number of houses to sell, and you're coming out of the most frantic buying period ever, when you put it into perspective, that negative 12% on volume of sales, when you look at our average price, the average price is held. It's down less than 2%, because
Yeah,
of the
1.6%
yeah
as of the end of
1.6.
September.
Right. Yeah. And that's, yeah, on average. So again, we're still talking, you're down 1.6% on record prices as well.
Right.
And again, you can attribute the majority of that to supply and demand. We still have more demand than we have supply. So until we get more supply or less demand or both, prices aren't going to go the other way. Maybe you remember these stats better than I do, but they're the stats about the number of people coming into Canada and coming into New Brunswick. Those numbers.
Yeah, so I
Um,
don't remember the exact immigration numbers to New Brunswick from out of province and out of country for that matter. But in the
it was
last
tens
two,
of thousands.
yeah, in the last 2 years, the province has seen more people move here than in the previous 29 years. That was a CBC article. And one other thing we've talked about before, with higher interest rates, and we had Melissa Keith come in and talk to us about that from RBC. We're seeing sellers not want to sell because they're locked into a 2% interest rate, and they have no interest in going to a 5% interest rate when they move somewhere else. And there are options around that Melissa clarified for us, and we can talk about another time. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, we good to have her in, but yeah, just a general basic one being to port their mortgage, right? So, or to
yeah,
blend, so that, yeah, if their interest rate might have been 1 point something or two, and maybe now they're looking at high fives, but when you blend that into their new one, they're still looking at a really reasonable rate of, 4, as an example. But yeah,
right.
you're right. We'll defer that to her. But that also alludes to, we're having these conversations all the time. In order to stay on top of things, we have to have these conversations with our industry partners,
Yep.
of which lenders are key. And that's another piece of advice for people. Like, one of the main things that you need to do, is getting pre-approved and establishing what you can afford and what you're comfortable with, and
Yeah.
identifying the right lender to have that conversation with. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, we're seeing sellers sit on the sidelines for that reason, whether it comes from just not understanding that they can port their mortgage, or there's just no interest, but that's kind of limiting our supply as well and causing that sales activity to be down.
Absolutely, yeah. Because a lot of times we hear the question, "Well, if I sell, where am I going to go?"
Exactly.
And that becomes one of our challenges, right? It's like, okay, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Because we have to have a lot of those conversations for those people who are listening to this, if you want to sell but you don't want to know you don't know where you're going to go, um, waiting for that right property to pop up, it's almost too late because someone else is going to scoop it up before you're ready to sell. So we have these meetings. Lots of times people will say, "Oh, I don't want to waste your time." But really, whenever anybody says that to me, it's reach out to us, because lots of times it takes months to find the right solution for people. So if it's on your radar, reach out to us, have us in. Let's figure out where you're at today, fill us in on where you want to go, and then get us out there trying to identify and find where that property that you're looking for. Because if it just happens to come up, in days past, you used to be able to do that. I can think of years in the business where days on market was 3 months, 4 months, and that was average. And we look back at one point in the pandemic. I think our days on market, well, recorded, dropped down to like 22 days, 20 days. We were in at 15 at one point, I think, days on market. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So by the time you make the phone call to figure out what your house is worth and get it on the market, that other property is long since sold. And I think that's a lot of the frustration that we're hearing from people out there, is that they want it to just slow down so that they can do what they want to do. But there aren't really any indicators that we're going to slow down.
Right.
If you're
And I
following
think
global media, go ahead. Sorry.
I think the lesson from that is, if you even remotely think there's a chance you might want to make a move in the next year, 2 years, go get pre-approved, have us in and get a value on your home. We'll have the details ready to go when that house does pop up that they want to jump on, when they are in that situation, when we have a buyer who may want their house. We have the information, they're informed, they're ready to make a move when that property comes available. They don't have to start that process from scratch.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just get on the radar and start lining those ducks up, because it's not it's you're not wasting our time. That's what we spend our time doing. And again, sharing this information this way. Generally, we're out there sharing this information one appointment at a time, and it's a
Yeah.
slow way to deliver important information. So yeah, kudos to you for getting this up and going.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time when they have us in and they're, well, we're not super serious. We just kind of want to know what our house is worth. Your financial advisor sends you updates all the time on, your portfolio's worth X amount of dollars. And this is one of the biggest investments most people make. So why not stay up to date on what it's worth? You're not wasting our time. It's good for us to know what's out there.
Absolutely, yeah. Because when you look at how much equity people have in their houses right now, based on the last few years, if they've been in a house for even since 2018, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And that, speaking of that equity, I mean, that's something that I think most people um, don't think enough about, and how they could put that to work for them and create a lot of wealth through real estate, by whether it be refinancing or getting a home equity line, and using that extra money to invest in other properties that are going to pay for themselves and just build your own wealth. And whether
that's
it's early retirement or something to pass on to your kids,
yeah,
it's something I just
that's at
started.
least, yeah, that's at least one or several podcasts in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
That's a foreshadow into some other things that I know you're going to talk about, because that's another whole topic. And
Yeah.
there's three topics in that one statement. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah. I
lot
think
there.
just people even knowing that they can do something with that equity to help them build wealth and retire early, or maybe leave their 9 to 5 job and start a business. It's a great option, and a conversation starter for people.
Yeah.
So I guess, Chris, what stats stand out to you comparing, our current stats that we have in front of us to 2022, and where do you see the market heading in the next couple of years, whether interest rates rise or fall? Immigration doesn't seem to be going anywhere. We're attracting people with Greater Moncton specifically, with job growth, industrial parks, apartment buildings going up everywhere, with our average price being so low being another attractive feature. Where do you see the market going, and what stats stand out the most to you?
Yeah. So when I look at those stats, part of it is what we just talked about. So when we're looking back at what's happened since, I'll use 2018 as an example. And again, just to speak to the you had mentioned about the immigration. One of the cool things about what's happening in Greater Moncton right now is, and New Brunswick in general, I believe. I'm not positive about that because I know the Moncton area for sure. The folks that are moving into this area, they're that key demographic of the 20s and 30-year-olds, the young families, the young people that are at their prime earning and working part of their lives. Whereas when you look at just New Brunswickers, we have we have we're not replacing. Our population was declining year over year for the last many years. And now that's not the case. Now we're seeing positive growth in, again, record numbers. But yeah, just as an example, so they talk about the transactions being down 12%, and average price being down 1.6. But if you've owned a home since 2016 in Greater Moncton, on average since 2016, your house is worth double what it was worth in 2016. If you've owned a home since 2018, it's worth 87% more than it was worth in 2018.
Yeah.
And if you've even only owned a home since the pandemic started in 2020, it's worth 58% more. So just by owning that home, so if you paid $150,000 for a house in 2016, it's worth $300,000+ right now. And having that equity there, like I said, we won't we won't go down that rabbit hole right now because this podcast would be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
But I guess I would just say tune in for that podcast and that conversation,
Yeah.
because there's a bank out there that has a saying referring to how rich you are. So a lot of people, you have that wealth there, and what you do with that will be life changing for you and the generation to come after you. And you're faced with an opportunity. There was a lot of people that, well, I wouldn't say a lot. Again, it's kind of that thing that catches the negative press. But there were people that were reluctant to have so many new people moving into our area. But when you look at what it did for the home equity growth of anyone who's owned a property in New Brunswick, but specifically in southeastern New Brunswick, in a few short years, that's wealth that you might have to. We all know how hard it is to save money. How
Yeah.
long would it take an average family to save $100,000 when the cost of everything is appreciating? And I mean, that's another rabbit hole we could go down. We see we see interest rates going up. We see so yeah. What's happening is clawing some of that equity back away from the hands of the people that now have it. But the opportunities that people have right now, um, uh, to secure their financial future, simply from going through the act of having bought a home
Yep.
8 years ago, is we might never see it again in our lives, right? Like, that's a generational thing. It probably happened in Alberta when the oil industry took off. That would have been. It takes something like that. It happened in Newfoundland, actually, during my career. It happened in Newfoundland when the offshore oil supply was tapped into. Saw almost, you can actually, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a mirror image. When you saw what happened, I think I want to say it was like it was like 2006, 2007, anyways, but in Newfoundland. Again, I digress. But when those oil contracts were secured, house prices in places like St. John's at least doubled
Right.
almost instantly within a very short period of time,
Yep.
within a couple of years. And you just that stuff doesn't happen very often. But again, they're a great example. Newfoundland house prices have not dropped or gone back down to pre that period.
Right.
Our house prices are not going to drop and go back to until we get a lot more supply. As long as and the in-migration of people and the Canadian policy around immigration, there is nothing to suggest that that prices are going to go down. So
Yeah, I think it's just going to keep on going as well. Getting an alert from Zoom here that we have 7 minutes left.
sure.
So I guess any last minute advice, Chris, on what people should or shouldn't be doing right now in the housing market, and then follow that up with how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you can find us. You can Google us. You can find us. It's Constantine and Co. That's the easiest way to find the details for myself, for Josh, for any of the rest of the team, Lynn, Scott, Megan. So you can reach out to us. Again, I guess I would put out there. You're not wasting our time. To any of our past clients that are maybe seeing this, that we haven't done an evaluation on your house, getting up to speed on how much equity you're sitting on and what you can do with that, how you can potentially reinvest that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's one of our main goals of reaching out to people this way, is to just say, to understanding where you're at in your equity position with your home. Is That's the important thing right now. We've had in extreme situations, because we know that in Ontario prices skyrocketed, British Columbia, so on. In a lot of those cases, people saying, well, how are young people buying homes out there? A lot of them were buying homes because their parents had so much equity in their houses, just because they'd owned them. Their parents were taking equity and investing that into their kids home.
Yeah.
And I'm talking adult kids, because it's
Yep.
hard to buy a house in Southern Ontario before you're 40 years old. And then again, pandemic price escalations. A lot of those folks were repaid within 2-3 years because the houses appreciated so quickly. So again,
Yeah.
different markets, not our market. Not going to see that kind of not don't foresee us seeing that kind of growth in that short period of time. But just there's a lot of things that people could be thinking about doing. Again, what maybe it's their kids' education plans, that they'd never thought they were going to be able to have the money to get the tax savings from that. I mean, like I said, these are episodes. These are episodes to come. But
Yep.
yeah, reach out to us, please. You're not wasting our time. If we haven't been in touch with you, because like everybody, we've made it our mission to reconnect with the people that have helped us get our business to this point,
Yeah.
and done business with us in the past. So yeah, this is one avenue, and hopefully people find this helpful. They can watch this on their own time. And again,
Yeah.
thanks to you, Josh, for pulling this all together, because it's I feel like it's an important thing for us to do. So
Yeah, it's a
kudos to
way
you.
to get information from those who have it to those who don't. So
Absolutely.
thanks for coming today, Chris, and filling us in. And until next time, we'll be chatting.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks, Josh.
See ya.